The Museum of Science and Industry's Anne Frank The Exhibition is now open. The exhibition features a pioneering experience outside of Amsterdam to really immerse visitors in a full-scale recreation of the annex rooms where Anne Frank, her family, and 4 other refugees spent 2 years hiding to evade Nazi capture. It includes more than 130 original artifacts from the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam and is designed for adults and children ages 10 and older. All tickets include the exhibition audio guide in English and Spanish. Get your tickets today at griffinmsi.org.
We're not saying a visit to Bloomington, Indiana will turn you into a forest-bathing, sandal-wearing, dissertation-defending, stray cat rescuing, nonprofit starting, Monroe Lake paddling, guitar strumming, march organizing, vinyl listening, leaf watching, zen finding, coffee roasting, yoga practicing, beer drinking, bread baking, co-op joining, pottery throwing, vintage thrifting, bike everywhereing, art appreciating, farmers market shopping, biz thinking, football fan. But we're not saying it won't. Visit Bloomington. See how it inspires you.
Today on CityCast Chicago, are Illinois' mental health courts actually effective? What about housing protections in Woodlawn? And what kind of tax breaks are the owners of the United Center looking for? Let's break it all down. It's Friday, May 15th. I'm Simona Licea in for Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm joined today by some of our favorite reporters in Chicago. Justin Lawrence with Crane Chicago Business. Justin, welcome back to the pod.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
And making her CityCast Chicago debut, Grace Hauk with the Illinois Answers Project. Grace, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I was on yesterday and I said confidently that it's patio season. I don't care what the forecast says. I don't care if there's rain coming. It's patio season as far as I'm concerned. And so I'm curious if either of you has a patio that you like, that you go to when the weather turns. Justin, what about you?
Yeah, I live near River West, and there's a place called the Dandy Crown. It's like a cocktail bar, neighborhood bar, but they have a great patio and they kind of change it up seasonally. So you never know exactly what's going to be the decor out there. And it's a nice big patio. My dog loves it because we walk by there and they give her treats. So if we're walking that way, she will steer me towards the patio. And then all of a sudden, I'm having a beer on the patio and I don't know how that happened. So I really like it. And then, this is not a patio, but I have a friend coming in town this weekend and I am sure we will go to the Riverwalk. It's a tourist area. Everybody loves it. It's overcrowded, but there's a reason because it's really nice and it's nice to be out there on the river.
Great people watching on the Riverwalk. Yeah, I feel like you just set up shop at one of those, one of the restaurants and just see who's on the boats, who's walking around and kind of what's going on. Is the one near you, is that more of a patio where you hang out for hours and hours, or is that the spot that you're going because the cocktails are especially good, or what's the kind of the vibe?
I think it can be both, right? For me, it's where I go, if there's a grocery store across the street that I always go to. So if I need to stop and really think about what I want to make for dinner that night, then I'll stop at happy hour and get a cocktail and decide what I'm going to cook up, and then, maybe stay too long that I just end up getting pizza on the way home instead of actually making food.
And you cook it tomorrow. You do it the next day. Yeah. Grace, what about you? You have a favorite patio in Chicago?
For me, I just moved, so my patio will be my back porch. And so I am just very excited to have access to an outdoor space again, because where I have been living for the past, 4 years, didn't have any outdoor area. And so looking forward to some grilling, some dinner parties outside, and planting.
I'm with you. I'm apartment hunting right now, and I currently don't have a deck. And every spot I look at that has one, I'm just salivating. I'm like, think of the parties I could have, the friends I could invite, and the drinks I could have on my back deck. So I think classic nice weather experience. Well, we do want to hop into some big stories. Grace, I want to start with you. You have been doing a lot of reporting looking into mental health courts around Illinois. And we're going to start with the basics. What exactly is a mental health court?
What it is really is a specialty court, a type of problem-solving court is the larger umbrella. There's veterans courts, drug courts, family treatment courts. Mental health courts are just one part of it. And it's kind of like an enhanced probation. So say you are someone in Illinois who has a severe mental illness, you're facing criminal charges, and you also meet a range of criteria for eligibility, you may be given the choice. Go through the traditional criminal process, possibly prison, or go through mental health court where you could get connected to treatment, other resources. And if you complete this 1 to 2 year program, again, kind of like enhanced probation, you could have the chance to have your charge dismissed and expunged. And the idea is try to divert people out of the criminal justice system, away from prison and into community resources.
Well, so there's a line in the story that I think summarizes the tension most clearly, which is that, the line is, nationally, research has shown mental health courts reduce recidivism, but it's unclear if they improve psychiatric symptoms. What is the difference between those two things, and why should we be concerned about that?
I don't see a ton of just unanimous agreement on what the goals of mental health courts are and what the threshold for success should be. It's common that it should improve psychiatric symptoms, reduce recidivism, ultimately try to save taxpayers money by doing this too. But there's not a ton of good data. I worked with Josh McGee of Mindsight News on this story. We went to every mental health court in the state to say, hey, give us your data.
And how many mental health courts is that?
31 in Illinois. Because we wanted to know, what studies do you have that you've done that show that this is working? And there was not a lot of information. And it's kind of hard to measure if there has been an improvement in psychiatric symptoms. Graduation rates are something that people look at. Did they make it through the program? But often judges, court staff say that's not the full story. So we were able to show that about half of people do graduate, but there aren't many long-term studies about how did this, substantially change your future. We're able to talk to people who say this really was life-changing for them, that they were connected with treatment for the first time, maybe got a diagnosis for the first time, but that's not everyone. And there are a lot of critics that say there should be more research, that the growth of mental health courts has outpaced their research on the effectiveness of them, that this can be coercive, and that this could incentivize police to arrest people in order to connect them with treatment if there is a mental health court in their area. So it's definitely a lot of debate around this issue.
Well, and because the way the court works, right, is like, so, you commit a crime, you're arrested, you appear, in court, and at some point someone decides to divert you from the regular court process to this mental health court process. And if you are then accepted into this program, it still requires like regular court appearances. You're still working with, a judge, a prosecutor, defense attorney. There's a probation officer, and also treatment provider, peer support, case management. But it's regimented, like that
very
that system,
rigid, very rigid.
And sometimes it's like, oh, we're requiring you to say, get rehab or get treatment for something, but it's not necessarily always providing those services directly. Do I have that right?
Yeah, often the court will connect people with those services. There's kind of a funding question that comes into play. The court doesn't always directly fund those services. Medicaid is a big component of this, and a lot of programs rely on people having access to Medicaid, which we all know is probably going to change in Illinois soon.
You mentioned that about 50% of people graduate. What happens to the people who don't?
There's something called like a voluntary withdrawal. If somebody just decides, actually, this is too much work, this isn't right for me, I prefer the traditional criminal process, they can make that call. There's a neutral termination. That's often if someone maybe gets cancer, gets really sick, is unable to continue. Or the court staff realizes this person actually may not even be fit to stand trial, and we need to put them on a different path because they're no longer eligible for this path. And then there is termination. There is failure if someone is cut from a program.
Going sort of backwards down the funnel here, there's the people who graduate, the people who are unable to graduate, but then there's this whole other swath of people that are never diverted in the first place.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, as you're saying, that the larger swath in Illinois is everybody else who goes through like the regular criminal process. There's also this large group of people who apply or are referred to mental health court and are not accepted. So the band really gets narrow and narrow and narrow as you go along. And the number of people who actually graduate and make it through is such a small fraction of, the total top of the funnel. And more than 2 million people in Illinois live in counties that don't even have a mental health court. So that raises pretty big questions about equitable access across the state. Why, if you have, bipolar type 2 and you get a DUI or a theft charge in Cook County, why are you eligible for mental health court? But if the same thing happens in Champaign, you're not. That doesn't exist.
Well, and you even tell the story of a person who the crime was committed in a county that had a mental health court, but he resided in a county that did not, and so was not eligible for that process.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a big question about these residency requirements. Actually, last fall, there is a conference for people who work on all these specialty courts, and I attended the conference, and there was a session about how do we try to improve reciprocity across jurisdictions? How do we try to work on this residency aspect? So the state is very aware that this is a problem, and the state is trying to create more specialty courts, but that's challenging.
Grace, what's the conclusion to take from this? Because on the one hand, it seems like maybe the courts aren't as effective as they could be, right? And so does it make sense to even be opening up more mental health courts? But on the other hand, it does seem like it's at least something, a somewhat better alternative than just shoving everybody into prison who ends up going through the traditional system, and particularly in those counties that don't have a mental health court. So I guess how are particularly the folks who are closest to trying to help people get the resources that they need, how are they kind of thinking about what needs to change in this system?
What we found is when it works, it really works. We talk to people who are convinced that this put them on a different trajectory, changed their lives, and now they're leaders and advocates in their community and championing criminal justice reform in the state. That is a very real experience. The opposite is also very true. I think something that was surprising to us is how this had just kind of continued to go along. Courts are continued to launch without there really being much scrutiny, without there being much transparency. I think there are big questions about how the state of Illinois, the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, could be more transparent about this, could take a harder look at this. But at the end of the day, this is a promising model and it's effective on a broken system. We include someone from, I think, NAMI, Illinois, talking about how this is a Band-Aid. And it's a very effective Band-Aid. But at the end of the day, there needs to be larger systemic change because ideally mental health courts wouldn't have to exist at all.
Right. It's so deep into the process, right? By the time someone has committed a crime and that is serious enough to be in the court system, right, there are so many other things that have likely failed that person, whether it's healthcare or economy or even just something that has happened in their personal lives.
Exactly. And a lot of the folks that we talk to and feature, this is not their first touch point with the criminal justice system. For one veteran that we talked to, it was his 6th DUI that he was finally given the chance of mental health court. For a woman who comes from the Bloomington Normal area, she'd spent time in jail in 3 states. And so they are quite deep into the system, and this has been a very life-changing off-ramp for them. But why does it take that long?
This weekend, the world-famous Randolph Street Market Festival returns to Chicago's West Loop. This is a shopping and entertainment experience like no other. Named a top 10 U.S. flea market by Travel and Leisure, USA Today, and HGTV, has been a destination for antique and art collectors, set decorators, interior designers, and fashionistas from around the world for 20 years and counting. With an on-site parking garage, shop the indoor building and outdoors too. The market is going to be here, rain or shine. They've got over 200 mini boutiques selling art, antiques, vintage fashion, vinyl, and more. Take a break while you're shopping and enjoy live music, food, and 3 market bars. You never know what you're going to find or who you're going to run into at the Randolph Street Market. Get your tickets now at randolphstreetmarket.com. The Newberry Library is excited for their ongoing commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. They want you to stop by and visit their brand new exhibition, Free and Independent, which includes a July 1776 broadside copy of the Declaration and a handwritten manuscript of the Federalist No. 3. Then you can stop by the reading rooms to view Jefferson's annotated copy of the Federalist and Washington's diary. On June 6, scholars Danielle Allen and Scott Stevenson will appear at the Newberry in an hour-long conversation to discuss Allen's brand new book, Our Declaration, a reading of the Declaration of Independence in defense of equality, and take a deep dive into the history, impact, and contemporary resonance of the document. As always, exhibitions and programs at the Newberry are free and open to all. Learn more at www.newberry.org.
Justin, I want to go to you next. We have spent a ton of time on this show talking about the Bears, watching them play Arlington, off Chicago, off Springfield, off Indiana, and back again, with the question of public subsidies kind of at the center of it all. But we haven't spent as much time with the 1901 project, the mega development sort of getting underway this year at the United Center. That development seems poised to win their own $50 million tax break. But is this a done deal?
It is not a done deal. It was approved in a city council committee this week and could be up for approval next week in the full city council. And I mean, the reason we haven't talked about it as much in terms of subsidies is because we didn't know that they were seeking subsidies or
I thought it was all privately financed, Justin.
Yes. They were very happy to say that. And when they announced it a couple years ago and in last February, it went through city council for its zoning approvals, kind of governing what they could build there. And even then we didn't know that there might be this level of subsidies. And then in March, I was just trolling the city's legislative slate like I do, and I saw this what's called a Class 7B property tax incentive, and yeah, sure enough, they are applying for. Actually, technically, Mayor Brandon Johnson has submitted this application for it's a $55 million property tax abatement over 12 years. So, for $5 million a year, and as part of applying for that, you essentially have to attest that we can't do this project without it. And when I say project here, right, the overall development is a $7 billion project to totally overhaul the parking lots that surround the United Center. And that's what these sports teams want now. The complex, the entertainment, the districts, the whole experience. You want people spending money on tickets and beer and everything while they're inside the stadium. But if you can also get them to spend money before and after, and you get that revenue, all the better. But this property tax incentive is not for the $7 billion project. It's for the first phase of that, which is a little over $500 million. And there will be future phases. And in that first phase, there's, they're building some underground parking, or at least mostly underground, not the surface level, a new hotel, a 6,000 seat, new concert venue. And I would always predict that something will get resolved and it probably gets approved next week. And there's not much, as kind of absurd as it is that we didn't know about this subsidy and now all of a sudden they say, we can't start construction unless we get this. We can't even do it. We can't start it. Because they had because they got the zoning approvals. Yes. A year ago, they could have applied for the construction permits anytime between then and got going. But at some point they decided, or said, we can't do this without it. And the city agrees. Remember, this is the Reinsdorf and Wirtz families that own the Bulls and Blackhawks respectively and co-own the United Center together. And, so the city agrees, and there's not that much opposition to giving them that. They have to go to City Hall, hat in hand, asking for something. And there's a union, Unite Here Local 1. They represent concession workers at the United Center currently, and they want to be involved representing workers in this future development. So they see kind of a leverage point here to try to get as much as they can out of this future development, or at least the first phase. And where it's kind of breaking down is they also want to represent workers at restaurants that will get built outside of those venues. And that's kind of where the owners are drawing a line. And partially because I think they say, look, we don't want to use big national brands here. It's an opportunity for newer chefs or businesses to open, and we don't want to kind of burden them or increase their labor costs from the jump. Unite here so far is still pushing for it. There's been no resolution. So they got through committee, but the chairman, Alderman Derek Curtis, said, I'm not going to call this for a vote unless there's some resolution. And that's going to be difficult. When you think about this project, that there's also lots and lots and lots of construction jobs, and those unions
are like, hey, can we get started on this, please?
They just want to get going. And you have kind of one union being adamant it should be opposed and others saying, let's move forward.
Well, and it does seem like it's interesting because I think this debate that Unite here is having, with the owners is a pretty, from my perspective, seems like a pretty standard kind of labor negotiation on a big project like this, of just establishing ahead of time, who has what territory and where are we kind of positioned in this new grand scheme of things. That seems more or less kind of unrelated to the idea that I think a lot of Chicagoans are kind of more interested in, which again is this tax subsidy, right? Is this $50 million tax subsidy over 12 years? That's what, 10% of the cost of the first phase of construction here. But that's also, again, over those 12 years, millions of dollars that are not going primarily to Chicago public schools. What does that mean for the property taxes of the residents living in Chicago who have to make up that bigger share of the pie? We talk about this all the time on the show of it's a bit of a zero sum game as far as property taxes. And so I think it's interesting that this is kind of the thing that's holding it up, even though I don't think the two are necessarily directly related. Again, particularly in the mind of the average Chicagoan.
I thought there might be some pushback to that in committee, and maybe there will be on the larger city council. Committees are smaller, 18 aldermen instead of 50. But I think part of why there's not much opposition is where that opposition would usually come from is from the progressive side of the city council. And in this instance, you have Mayor Johnson shepherding this through, or trying to. He's been very vocal about the potential for the Bears to move to Arlington Heights, which would, essentially allow them to have a much lower property tax bill over 40 years. And just bluntly saying, state lawmakers should not be so busy trying to come up with property tax for billionaires. And yes,
and yet here we are, almost functionally. Functionally, kind of the mechanism is the same. Obviously, if this legislation passes in Springfield, it has broader reaching, effects.
Right. There are differences. But in the potential break for the Bears would be much larger than what they're getting there. Right. But it is still property tax big from billionaires, literally.
It is still property tax revenue not going to a local school district. You know what I mean? At the end of the day.
And so they have to show, their math here of why this isn't feasible without it. So they essentially come to the city and they say, hey, this is not feasible for us and our investors, obviously, without it. But what we mean by that is we won't secure as much profit as we would like, or we think is necessary to move forward. And so the city is stepping in to bridge that gap. And the owners say, look, if we get the subsidy, that is what we need to bring in all the rest of the investment from our partners. But, it could have also been solved by the owners putting in more equity into the project. And this is not rare. I don't want to make it seem like it is. This happens all the time.
Right.
And
well, no, I think that's actually what's sort of remarkable about it is this is all pretty commonplace, in fact.
Right. I will note a pretty big exception is last January, I reported that Bally's, the coming casino and along the river, they applied for the same property tax incentive. And the city said no. It's a little different because they have like a pre-existing agreement with the city to build it. So the city could kind of point to that as like, no, you have to build it.
We're already in this. You can't.
But the city said no. Bally's hired a bunch of, every lobbyist in town to try to get it going, and it went nowhere. And I will note, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, Bally's celebrated, what's called the topping off at the casino, a milestone in construction. And that is set to be completed, I believe, early next year. And lo and behold, despite saying this project is not feasible, we can't do it without this subsidy, they did it. So there is precedent for doing that. I wonder what will happen next week. I don't know that Unite Here is going to give up, but these are the probably lowest wage workers at this larger development. Construction workers do pretty well, but concessionaire and people who work in a hotel are on the lower end of that. So I wonder if some of the other workers they represent or are set to represent, the owners might agree to better terms for them while not agreeing to allowing them to represent restaurant workers. But that's more speculation than reporting.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to wait and see, and we'll certainly be following this and all the other stadium construction to be debated, breaking ground.
It never ends. It never ends.
Oh, it never ends. It never ends.
Let's be real, May weather can be unpredictable. One day you got sunny skies, the next is torrential downpour. And hey, you need windows that can manage whatever is thrown your way. And you don't want some high utility bill being the thing that ruins your summer. Window Nation can help you get new, energy-efficient windows at a great price. The Buy 4 Windows, Get 4 free sale is going on right now. You can update all your windows and get half of them for free. Plus, you get 0 down payment and no payments or interest for 2 years. Window Nation also promises a lifetime warranty, so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. And the installation crews finish the job in a day or less with a 96% customer satisfaction rating and over 45,000 5-star reviews at 3 million windows installed across the country. So hey, schedule a fast free consultation at windownation.com and hurry because the sale ends soon. That's windownation.com.
Grace, in kind of related news in the sense we're talking development, big things happening in Chicago. The opening of the Obama Center is probably one of the city's most anticipated events of the season. Mm-hmm. But of course, for years, neighbors have been sounding the alarm over affordability and gentrification. Back in 2020, the city adopted an anti-displacement ordinance in Woodlawn. But new reporting from some of your colleagues show that it hasn't really delivered, even though housing prices have spiked. Break it down. What happened here?
Sure. So reporting from my coworkers, being Sydney and Andrew, they found that the ordinance largely failed. They really go through systematically each elements of the anti-displacement ordinance. They talk about the vacant lot set aside. There was this program to preserve existing affordable rentals, a Renew Woodlawn program, a loan fund, the home improvement grants, local jobs, and this idea of a right of first refusal program that renters would get the first chance to match or beat any outside offers before they were sold. But the city never even enforced that measure, and no developer even filed the required notices. And so most of these programs failed. Some were slightly better than others. One element that kind of worked was the home improvements grants. And the idea here was there was $1 million earmarked for these long-term homeowners who needed help fixing up their properties. And 36 homeowners did receive grants of up to $20,000. So of all the pieces that didn't work, they really spotlighted that as something that kind of had some success.
I think what's so fascinating about this story, I don't know if fascinating is the right word, depressing maybe, it makes one cynical, is like neighbors in the area have been talking about this for a decade. right?
Yes, over a decade.
Over a
now.
decade, right? Like since the debate over where the center should be sited, once the site was selected, people were saying like, hey, our housing prices are going to go up. Hey, our housing prices are going to go up. We're going to get priced out. We're going to get priced out. The data has shown that to be true. I mean, in the story, I think it was housing prices increased something like fourfold in the last decade.
I think it's over fourfold. Let me pull it
like
up.
4.6 maybe
exactly,
times.
yes,
yeah, almost 5 times. The doubled since 2019, so shortly before this ordinance passed. And on top of that, the story also shows who's been moving in and out of the neighborhood. You have more Black families leaving Woodlawn and more white families coming into the neighborhood. Like pretty much exactly what people said was going to happen.
Yep.
Is happening, has happened. And then on top of that, we're kind of in this period, this in-between period right now. There was someone quoted in the story who talks about how like she's moving out of the neighborhood because even though the prices on housing have gone up, they still haven't quite seen what the promise of investment is when housing prices go up. You're not seeing necessarily more local businesses or more services or more things coming up yet and I think that partly just has to do with like where we are in the building cycle, right? I think that certainly will probably come. We're going to see the hipster coffee shops or whatever come in eventually, but
what we should have seen at this point is at least like the construction jobs, right? And so my coworkers really like looked at that. The city plan required developers on the city land to submit plans for local hiring, and one development resulted in 3 jobs. Which is just kind of baffling to me. Like 3 jobs, really? Like that's the best we can do?
Yeah, well, and I think like it's interesting because I know that this ordinance has served as a model for some other neighborhoods around the Obama Center, but also I think on the Northwest side, right? There's an attempt to kind of build something very similar that has some of these same elements, right of first refusal, preserving rentals, and like, again, some of those elements that have been the least successful here in Woodlawn.
I just find it interesting, intriguing. All of this is based on the coming Obama Center, like as it's being built. And it's basically here now, tickets just went on sale. They sold out. To tie it back to the United Center, Chicago, really J.B. Pritzker is trying to land the 2028 Democratic National Convention. And so they had a bunch of DNC bigwigs in this week, and they toured the Obama Center and had an event there, a private party. And I'm just curious, the narrative around the Obama Center in Chicago for so long has been these concerns about the surrounding area and what it did to the park. And now that it's open, and obviously there will be these, big events there and things that people are proud of or happy about, like, will that dampen some of the criticism about that? Or will it actually enhance it, because now it's open and people are here, and are they seeing what's happening to the neighborhood around it? Or is it kind of operating in a silo or on its own little island within a larger neighborhood?
That's so interesting because my speculation, if you had to ask me, like, what do I think people will think of the Obama Center in 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, is like, I do think it will be sort of on the list of things that Chicago has as its jewels, right? Up there with like Millennium Park. But when I think about also, we just talked this week about Jim's Original, right, on Maxwell Street and how it's moving, and UIC is once again expanding. And I think there is a lot of complication in that area because I don't think, that's certainly an institution that I think people are proud of. But Chicagoans can have long memories about, what they have lost when it comes to new things and the way things change and sort of the march of progress, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I think the Obama Center will kind of fall into that of, it will be one of those things that like on the surface is something we have a lot of pride in and that we tell people about, but also the people who live here will remember kind of how we had to get here, I guess, is what I think.
Well, and especially if it's, I anticipate, I think most do, that it will be a driver of tourism in the near future, right? But
yeah,
does this shine wear off in 5 years, 7 years? I don't know if there will be such enthusiasm for this after everybody who is most interested to see it comes and sees it once or twice? Will people keep coming back or not?
I don't know. Certainly other presidential libraries in other places like drive looky-loos and people to come. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, that'll just put more pressure on programming events. I was just talking to a source the other day that says they're going to have, a coalition meeting there next month. And so, my sense is they're going to try to keep programming alive and community interest alive.
And there will be I'm sure it'll be in line to host a presidential debate or primary debate, maybe more likely here in Illinois. But I do wonder, just 20 years from now, if we are still seeing it drive revenue, or maybe 20 years from now, they, like stadiums, they'll be talking about, renovations, and will the state or city help pay for it or something?
Yeah. Are they going to build a complex, an entertainment district complex around it? And then the people who moved in the past decade are then going to be priced out.
Yeah, they will be upset about it.
And again, I do think the other thing too is particularly seeing this outmigration of Black families from South Side neighborhoods. We have already felt the effects of that in the way that population loss has affected Chicago. And it just seems like with a project like this that, it's going to kind of continue that trend. Well, of course, we don't like to end on a negative note. We like to end every episode with a little bit of good news. I don't sing. Jacoby's the singer. So sorry, guys. I don't have the pipes on you. But Justin, I want to go to you. What's some good news you want to share with the people today?
Well, first, I'm feel much more comfortable in this non-singing environment. Feel no pressure to embarrass myself. My good news is, on Sunday, the NBA held its draft lottery where it just kind of decides which of the worst teams will get to select the next superstars in the draft. And the Bulls moved up from the 9th position all the way to the 4th. So they're in line to get a pretty good player. There's one guy in particular, Cameron Boozer. He is the son of former Chicago Bull Carlos Boozer. I would love to see him come to the Bulls. As bad as they've been, when you have young players who can maybe turn into something, there's just more excitement around it. Maybe he will be the key to driving revenue there, and they won't have to seek a property tax incentive for the second phase of the 1901 project.
So I got to be honest, every time we talk basketball on the show, I'm grateful that Jacoby is here because I know nothing. And I think the only question on my mind is, does this give you hope that we will have a Bulls season that is fun to watch and maybe even the potential of a winning season?
I think the first one, for the next year or two, could be fun to watch if they get a good player. I think the future is a little brighter now that they moved up into a real position.
Well, because it's been a bit depressing the past couple seasons.
I know this is good news. I will. The Bulls have picked 4th quite a number of times, and it has not gone very well. So I guess there is the potential that we get so excited for someone and then they don't pan out, and then it's sad. But we're not.
But we're in the hopeful phase right now.
Right now, we're thinking anybody that they might pick will be a superstar and fun and a pillar of the community and everything. So I'm looking forward to it.
Inevitably, when the pick doesn't go as well as we'd hope, we'll bring you back, and then we'll be like, hey.
Then I'll really, being a grump, I'll be really in my element. So.
Grace, what's the good news you want to share with the people today?
Mine is much more lame, but I have been trying for weeks to get this little pepper plant to grow. I have
this is not lame, Grace.
It's okay. Thank you for the support.
I'm here with you. Yeah.
Thank you for the support. Because in COVID, I got very into how do I take my avocado pits and my bell pepper seeds and how do I make them grow? And my apartment became the avocado tree farm. And I had 12 couple feet high little avocado trees that I was growing. And then there was the infestation of the little white flies, and they decimated they decimated the avocado tree farm. So I turned to peppers. And I recently repotted some and planted some for the coming, spring, summer. And 4 of them were thriving, starting to sprout, doing great. And I could not figure out what was going on with this little 5th pot. Maybe it was the wrong soil, the wrong pot. And this week, there's a teeny little sprout I saw coming up in the 5th pot.
It's just a late bloomer.
Yeah, it just takes a little extra time, a little extra sun.
I love this. I love that you've got a full range of pepper plants. Well, my good news is I just want to put folks on to another convention happening in Chicago. I don't know if you guys know, there's a lot of nerdy conventions that happen in Chicago over the course of the year. This weekend, Anime Central is going to be at Rosemont. And the reason I know about this is because, as listeners may know, my partner and I have designed a TTRPG, and he's going to be exhibiting it there. You can find it. It's called Fatefully Tragic Hero, or you can look it up, I think, under Save Point if you're going to be out there. But go by, say hi, play the game. It's anime inspired, which is why it's at Anime Central. But yeah, it's like our fourth or fifth con in 2 years, and it's been a weird, fun thing writing a game, and I'm excited about it.
That's fun.
That's awesome. I love that.
I want to give a huge thank you to our guest, Grace Hauk with the Illinois Answers Project. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for having me. This was awesome.
And Justin Lawrence with Crane Chicago Business. Justin, thanks for stopping by.
Of course, it's always fun.
That's it for today. I want to thank all the people who make CityCast Chicago. Your regular host is Jacoby Cochran. Our creative producers are Michelle Navarro and Emmy Mack. Our audience development manager is Chima Okoro. Post-production is by PJ Shahamet. And our roving producer this week is Elizabeth Kama. Our music is by Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. We're going to be back bright and early on Monday. We'll talk to you then.